Alrighty, so my special guest today is Kaipo, and Kaipo has a very interesting backstory, so I'm super excited to get into it. He's done a lot of different stuff. But Kaipo is a Hawaiian born entrepreneur and a real estate investor now based in Arizona. So he focuses on creating affordable housing through co living, new construction, and soon to be RV and mobile home parks. So after he scaled his maritime business in Hawaii, he transitioned to real estate full time, and he now serves as a capital raiser and general partner across multiple national projects. So Kaipo, appreciate it, man. Thanks for being here.
What's up, Jeff? Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. So I guess I want to start off with your maritime business in Hawaii. Most of the people listening to this maritime business that doesn't would like no exposure to that. So can you kind of walk us through what that company did, how you started it, and how you grew it?
Yeah, so just a high level, maritime is anything to do with the water, right? So things in harbors and so on and so forth. So I have a ship repair and maintenance business on the island of Oahu. Maritime. So we're a government contractor for the Navy and Coast Guard, but we also do commercial work for like the commercial shipyards around Oahu. And
Nice.
yeah, so the way I started was I started from the bottom, man, just like from, a lot of the stories you hear, right? So back in 2009, 2010, I was working for this company. It's a corporate company from the mainland, right? And they were operating on Oahu. I started off at the bottom, I mean, as just a tank cleaner and a laborer, right? So what we do is mainly we maintain and clean tanks, fuel systems, oil systems, sewage systems, and so forth. So like when you think of a ship, like anything from the tank and all of the associated piping that goes along with it that supports a vessel, right? So I started off from the bottom. I worked for this one company for about 1 year, and then this other company from Virginia came into Oahu. Excuse me. And they started doing work out there. So what happened was the new company, they were looking for employees, and they came in. They started recruiting. They tried to get like my bosses from the first company, the foremans, the project managers, and all that. And one project manager went over to the new company, but all of the foremen stayed because the bosses gave them a raise to keep them there. So when the project manager went over to the new company, he started looking at the lower tier guys, like just the regular tank cleaners and stuff, and said, "Hey, would you guys, want to come over with me?" And I mean, it wasn't comfortable. It was like a little risk because I was getting comfortable with the business and at the company and so on and so forth, but I saw it as an opportunity. So me and another guy decided to make the jump, right? So we went over and started off as just tank cleaners, like at the lowest level, and worked my way up to lead man, supervisor, foreman, general foreman, and project manager. So, and that was over 7 year time span. So built myself up in that business and in that company. And I was working as a W-2 employee for that company until I made it to the office and I started doing the estimating. I started seeing the finances and all of that stuff. And that one day, just the light bulb, that entrepreneurial light bulb just went off. And I said, yo, I can do this. Like, I know I see the whole picture now from the ground up, right? And I was able to visualize the jobs, knew every job, knew every process. And now once I was able to see the numbers and start bidding on these jobs and start actually winning jobs for the company, I realized that that this is something that I could do, right? And I mean, the hardest part though, because I was comfortable at this point, right? I was in management. I was chilling in the office in the AC, not getting dirty anymore. I had one nice salary, solid bonus package, just what do you call benefits package. I had a solid benefits package, and they had me just comfy, right? I thought, I realized I could do it, but like as I started kind of thinking about it, it was just the hardest piece was to take that leap of faith, right?
Yeah.
Because now, as I take the leap, now the company that I've helped build over the last 7 years, who came from Virginia, they're going to be my competitors at that point. But at that point, I kind of knew the whole playbook because I was part of building that playbook over 7 years. So I kind of knew what it took to build that, my own business. So on February 1st, 2018, I decided to start my company that I own now, ship repair and maintenance business. That is the same model. We do the same thing as my two previous companies that I work for, and built that business over 5 years. And then, excuse me. And in October 2023, I was able to scale myself out of that business. Basically, I built the team, put the right people in place where I really didn't have any role in the company already, because at every level from the tank cleaners above, and at that point, we were maybe 25 to 35 employees. We average around that range. I kind of just didn't have a job. I still obviously I still own the business, so I still take my draws, I still get paid, active income from that business. But I freed up all of this time, right? So I freed up all of this time and I went fishing for 1 month straight, right? So I told myself, and I told my girl, I said, hey, babe, I don't have nothing to do. I mean, I was trying to find stuff to do, but I kind of realized I was being a bottleneck. I was trying to, all those, like a bunch of years, like the last couple of years, like I was trying to do everything and have my finger on all of these little roles and responsibilities when I didn't have to be there already. I already had the people and processes in place to just get out the way. But anyways,
that's awesome.
Yeah. So I mean, after from October 2023 to November 2023, I went fishing every day. Like I just went, and I was on Oahu. I was in Hawaii, man, and I love fishing. So I told myself I can fish every day, no problem. But after fishing for a month, I got tired of fishing, dude. So I was like, I gotta do something, like I still got time. I needed to find something else for me to do to take up my time. So I mean, I've always been interested in real estate, investing, and I started looking around, going online, looking into different people doing real estate, and I actually went down a rabbit hole and called a bunch of different groups and communities and mentor masterminds, whatever you want to call it. And I did settle on one, and it was the Sub 2 community. I'm a part of the Sub 2 community with Pace Morby. One of the best decisions for sure I made, and I'm still a part of that community right now.
Nice. Yeah, it's such an interesting story to go from literally like lowest level at the company to owning the company. Walk us through what that was like, that first. I mean, at some point you got to make a decision, and you're literally going into a business to be a competitor with the people you work for. So that couldn't have been it wasn't like a side hustle turned into a full-time job. You had to just make a decision, rip the Band-Aid off, and go for it, right?
Yeah. To even make it more, even to add on to the story, actually, I sold my home. I sold my house that I own. I took the equity from that sale to start my business. So I sold my home and I went back to renting now. Just so like that was another mindset piece that I had to kind of get past. But I mean, I had to sell the home anyway. I mean, I was going through a divorce at that time, so I was getting half of the equity. Like the courts, we had to sell the home anyway. But I took my portion and I started the business, right? So that was everything I had, right? I started the business, and now it was lonely. I felt like I was on my own, but what I did have from the previous company was majority of the employees was loyal to me, because we kind of built, we were working together for years, and I've always taken care, of the employees and built great relationships with the employees, and, they were friends of mine as well. So 3 employees actually came over, and I started off with 3 employees, a handful of equipment from my garage. Yeah.
Nice. Bare bones.
bare bones.
You mentioned something interesting. So, like, I never really thought about this till you mentioned it, but entrepreneurship can be extremely lonely, because most people don't think about the fact that as we go through our lives, we have our jobs. A lot of our friends and our like communication with other humans is through our job. So you left this company where you were probably good friends and close with all the people, and suddenly it's just you, like kind of like alone on an island trying to get this going. So what was like the one kind of motivating factor that kept you going? Because you were comfortable, and it sounds like if you liked the people, you probably didn't like absolutely hate the job. So every business is tough. So what was like your main driving force that got you through all that?
So the main driving force for sure was I've always had just that entrepreneurial, mindset and spirit, right? Like as entrepreneurs, when you hear the word entrepreneurial spirit, it's just something that lives in you. It's there. It speaks to you. It talks in your ear. It tells you, gives you ideas. It helps you come up with visions. And I just wanted more. I just wanted more. Knew I could do more. And it's interesting because I come from a family where, we whenever we was growing up, just getting a job in the union, getting a job in the shipyard, like getting a job as construction, but working your way up, like that was considered one solid life, right? Like doing your 30 years and retiring and all of that. But that never really appealed to me, That just wasn't enough. It wasn't quenching, just the fire. Just me wanting to just do more, and me wanting to kind of create situations for myself instead of living under, rules and just in one W-2 under one in one corporate, under that corporate environment. So I just wanted more, man. I just wanted more. I knew I could do it. And I mean, like you said, it was lonely, and it was the hardest thing. It was the hardest step is taking that step, taking that risk, and letting all of just that safety net go, and being back out on that island by yourself trying to figure things out,
Yeah. Well, what's interesting, so you mentioned how you basically fished for a month straight. And I think most people really need to understand the fact that what you think you can just do the rest of your retirement, you're probably going to get sick of. And it's really sad because a lot of people will work and have a really high stress job to try to get to that retirement in their 50s and 60s, only to find out that once they have nothing else to do, they really don't enjoy what they thought they would. Where I think more people would benefit to adopt the mindset of like, finding something they like to do that they don't want to ever have to leave, like they truly enjoy it. And if it's not super lucrative, well, then find a way to get just enough passive income, however you need to be able to make ends meet and make that work. Because I think a lot of people take the all or nothing approach. They're like, okay, I'm just going to work this job. It sucks. I mean, we don't see a lot of people, I guess, today kind of work the same job for 30 years, but they bounce companies, but they work in the same role, more or less. And then at the end of that, they find out, hey, the best years of my life are in fact behind me, and I just worked through all of it. Whereas you're
Sure.
at least lucky, like, yeah, going through what you went through to grow a business, super hard, super demanding, super lonely. But at least you found out now, it's like, hey, now you're going to work on what you want to work on. And it's not necessarily that, you're loaded, like just billions on billions of dollars, but you can spend your time where you want, which is honestly as wealthy as any of us humans can actually get when it really comes down to it.
Yeah, man. I mean, that's accurate, because I mean, I thought I could fish for way longer than that, bro.
Yeah.
You can't. I couldn't, man.
Yeah, all that stuff, like in the book Buy Back Your Time really hit it on the head. He was talking about how, hey, if I went and sat on the beach, it's only about an hour before I start looking at the pool boy and thinking like, how much money does he make delivering these chairs?
Right. Right.
Entrepreneurship is fun. And like I think most people lose sight of the fact that their first venture is their way out of where they are. And so they lose sight of the fact that starting and running a business can be fun. But in the beginning, when it's the first one that you depend on, it's really stressful. And that kind of outweighs that. So what you did is pretty incredible, because I've known you for a while, and I don't ever hear you talk about anything related to the maritime business. So you totally scaled yourself out, like 100%. So what are some, like, walk us through kind of the process of how you did that? Because to me, that's incredibly impressive.
Yeah, no, so I do an hour and a half a week for that business. So it's just, I attend our L10 meetings. I attend one L10 meeting, a 90-minute meeting every Friday from 1 to 2:30, right? So the key for me to scale myself out was actually I read two books. Okay, so I read a book called Rocket Fuel from Gino Wickman. So he teaches you, about it's about a visionary role and an integrator role in business and how they work together. I read that book first, and then I read another book called Traction. So Traction is from Gino Wickman as well, and it's the same thing. But I mean, all it does is it shows you how to put your ideas, systems and processes like traction, like on the road, right? Because us as visionaries, we can be coming up with all of these ideas and we can be shooting them out into the universe, right? But until you can grab it, implement some type of system and process, slap it to the ground, give it some traction, it's never going to go nowhere,
Yeah.
So I read those two books and I learned about the entrepreneurial operating system. So what that is it's just a system, right, created by Gino Wickman, and all it is about learning to find the right people first of all, build systems and build processes in order to make sure you have the right team, everyone's vision is aligned, everyone understands the company vision, the big picture of the company from the top down. So from the visionary down to the deck plate, which is the people, the workforce down on the site working, right? So once we were able to implement that and core values and culture, right, and find the right people, we just kind of started hiring, and we hired a implementer that works for EOS. So they have these implementers across the country that you can hire, and they come, they help you build your leadership team, they look at your business, and they guide you to become very optimal. The business can run as optimal as possible, and the system does it automatically. So like there were, as an example, I had a couple good friends of mine that was with me for years in key roles, project manager, production manager level. And I knew that they weren't doing the job, they didn't have the right values and all that, but because of our friendship, I felt that as a visionary, right, I kind of kept them on, and they were causing disruption in the company. I wasn't as profitable and for many reasons. But anyway, when we implemented the system and you start rolling out core values and stuff like that, they realized that, hey, this isn't for me. If we're going to start, if the whole company going to start marching in this direction, I'm going to get exposed because I'm not living by these values. I'm breaking all of these rules per se, and all of my peers below me and next, everyone knows that I am. So they decided, like, the system pushes the people that's not the right people for the company. It pushes them out for you. They quit on their own, dude. Like, and this is something I didn't want to do, right? But it just got rid of all of the bad people, the people that weren't a good fit for the business, and it helped us find, the right people that actually fit just the specific seats and functions in our business. And I mean, we did recruit first. We recruited from in-house, but there is a bunch of there's systems and processes on how you select the people for each function and stuff like that. So we went through, all of the steps to find the right people, and ultimately we found everyone, on the team, to where me as the visionary really had no role at all, except for I still help with maybe strategy, with sales and marketing strategy on our meetings once in a while. Like if the estimators have questions about maybe a exotic job or bid or quote, they'll reach out to me, and that'll be like a one-off thing where I jump on a Zoom, or I just create a Loom for them and send it to them to kind of help them through that process. But that was what I implemented that actually allowed me to scale out of the business.
That's awesome. It's a really interesting conversation, because I've found a lot of people get into real estate because they're entrepreneurs and they're making a lot of money at their business, but they don't see a way that it can survive without them. And so they make all this money being very actively involved in their business, and then they turn around and buy real estate with it. And a lot of them run into the problem that they just think real estate's super simple, it's not going to be any work. And then suddenly now they've stretched themselves way too thin because they find themselves running a business of real estate, and now they've got this business.
Yeah.
But what you're talking about might be the thing that they should do first, right? They should look at their business and consult with somebody outside and bring them in to say, hey, how can we streamline this? Because the reality is, if you've got a pretty decent business, you can make way more money and get yourself completely financially independent quicker by managing that the right way than you can with real estate. I love real estate. I'm a huge fan of it, but it takes time to build it.
Yeah.
It takes really, really long time. Real estate works slowly. If you've already got a business and it's growing and you're just too busy, the quickest route to financial freedom is not real estate. It's by streamlining your business. And once you get yourself out of that, okay, now you can kind of look if you want to get into real estate.
Yeah, man. And I mean, just like, I know you was talking about the book Buy Back Your Time from Dan Martell. One of my favorite books as well. Read it and I know it, right? And I mean, there's a lot of things in there that is similar to what I've done in terms of how when you're using the different quadrants, the replacement quadrant and all, so on and so forth, when you're hiring people to take over, roles and responsibilities to free up time for yourself. And I mean, just walking the path and really feeling how it feels to go from a business where, hey man, like the first 4 years we was doing 60, 80 hours a week, in every role, sleepless nights, are we going to make payroll this week? Is the check coming? This, that, right? So like experiencing all of those tough times, and I mean, all I can say is it was a privilege to go through that. Like, it's just those rough, tough times is such a privilege because you learn and you grow. Nothing's going to teach you more than losing sleep at night because you got payroll in 2 days and you don't know where the money's coming from, and having to solve that and figure that out. I mean, that's deep, and that's it's a privilege, man, to experience that because you learn so much. You learn, and you have become more resourceful than you ever thought you could be when you put in situations like that. And it becomes part of, just your toolbox at that point. But back to my point, like when I did allow myself, get all my time back, it was odd to me. It was odd from doing all of this hours to not having anything to do, basically, right? So like after fishing, like I would go to the shops, I would be trying to look for problems at the warehouses, at the shops, like for me to help, but like everything was running smooth, man. Like, and just accepting the fact, like, hey, they don't really need me, right? And being able to swallow that pill, like these guys don't even need me anymore. Like I'm useless over here, right? But It was such a blessing as well, because when I did come into just the real estate space and starting learning, like you said, from the ground up, it takes some time, right? I tried different things. I had shiny object syndrome for sure. I realized that it takes work and it takes time, and some of the strategies, right, like wholesaling, fix and flip and all those things, like I realized as I started learning these different skill sets before I became, found my spot, I realized like, I was back to work. I was working 8, 10, 12 hours a day, like doing outreach, doing a bunch of that stuff. And like I said, it was a privilege to learn everything for sure, but I mean, I always pay attention because I got a taste of that freedom, that time again. So I always put that in the forefront of my mind when I am looking at a deal, thinking of a business or a partnership for sure. Like, hey, I'm gonna stay in my lane and do what I'm good at, and find partners who has the other piece of the puzzle that does the other piece, that has the attributes that I don't have and the skill sets that I don't have. And together, we can accomplish our goals. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And real estate is a particularly interesting one because it takes multiple brains to be able to take a deal full cycle. Like the person who can sit down every single month and go through all the books and make sure things are solid is almost every single time a different personality than the person who can be out there chasing deals and finding the opportunities. I've tried to do both, and it's a different person for both. It's too hard to keep switching. It's way easier, and people can do way more deals and more than just double by partnering with one other person, because they focus on what they're good at and they get extra good at it. And so, it's too, especially with real estate. When I think a lot of the entry level real estate books that educate people kind of do a disservice to the industry, because they're all talking about how they can get into their first deal. And that's why you see a lot of people just go for single family house hacks. Because when you boil it down to how much money one person has, very few people in the population can go out and do a commercial deal by themselves. But they learn the whole, in retrospect, looking at it, a lot of those books are just kind of lead funnels to getting people to be, house flippers or whatever it wants to be. Most people don't have the time for that. They're getting into real estate to free up their time, not for the money. And it's more important, I think, looking back on real estate, to learn how to get into deals and play a role that takes that person the least amount of effort. Because a lot of people, man, I'm sure you've met them too. They look at deals, they talk about real estate for 5 years and they never pull the trigger on anything. Yeah. Because they're trying to do everything in one deal. It's just way too hard. It's just way too hard. But an interesting question I have for you. You had already freed up your time, right? For most people, real estate is their way to do that because they work a job. You can't buy back your time when you are the employee, because if you prove to the company they don't need you, they're just not going to pay you.
Right.
So most people use real estate as that way to get to that point. You had already mostly achieved that. So what was still attracting you to real estate at that point? Was it just you were trying to scratch the entrepreneurial itch and then it made the most sense?
No, I mean, the biggest thing, and I didn't get, I mentioned this, glad you asked, was definitely just to get some tax benefits, right? Because on the ship repair and maintenance business, I mean, this straight up capital gains. Like, you just plowing through, you paying tax, you paying, employee tax, you paying every type of tax possible as a business owner on Oahu of Hawaii. And I was really taking a beating from the IRS when it came, tax time and stuff like that. So I wanted to, start acquiring assets that can help offset those, those costs, personally for me and my family for sure. So, I mean, that was like one of the main reasons, coming into it is, real estate is one of the things that, you can, there's a lot of tax benefits, right? If you do it right and you buy and hold right and you acquire assets and stuff like that. So that was it. That was for sure like one of the main things, if not the main thing too. Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting, because at a certain point, a lot of people think they need to make more money, but if you look at the easiest way to solve their immediate problem, you just need to keep more of your money. I can't tell you how many people I know, especially in Denver, there's like a lot of tech or high-level executives. They make $250,000 plus, and they're always complaining that they spend all their money. More than a third of it goes to the IRS, right? And so a lot of them, to go and make enough to make just, more money from their salary to where they're keeping what they want to.
Right.
It's hard. They're talking about, once they're at that level, going to the next level of their companies 5 years out, 10 years out, whatever it is. A lot of them would benefit from learning that, hey, it's not, maybe you don't need to work more. Maybe you just need to invest smarter, get a real estate asset that actually saves you money. And that will help you put more in your pocket this year. And especially with, the house, we're recording this on April 20th. The House has already passed the tax bill for 2025. My fingers are crossed that the Senate gets it approved, and we know Trump's going to sign it. And man, if he does. So for people who don't know, basically what the biggest thing when people talk about the tax advantages of real estate is depreciation, right? Because what you want to do is you want to make your money, and you want to be able to have paper losses. Like, a lot of people just think, I can spend my money so I don't have to have as much income, I'll save it. But you're spending the money, so that's not very helpful. What's really helpful about real estate is you can have a paper loss, So the IRS lets you claim that you lost that money, but you didn't really spend it, didn't come out of your pocket, which is one of the huge things that actually saves people the money. So that was kind of your primary motivation. How was that process of figuring out, okay, this is kind of what I want, which asset gives me the best chance and the best numbers of doing that?
I mean, honestly, it was just like you said, right? Coming into the industry and kind of learning. So started off in the single family space. That's the entry level, right? That's kind of like what we learn. So single family space, doing single family homes, got into buying co-livings and stuff like that. And then I did invest into, as I started learning more, I learned about multifamily, right? So I invested in a couple multifamily deals just to kind of get some funds out and kind of invest in that asset class. And the more I learned, I decided to, and I mean, that's when I started working with you, Jeff, right? As I learned more about the mobile home parks, right, I became very attracted to, just the tax implications and just the asset class itself, because a lot of times people don't realize, and I didn't either until I met you and we really kind of talked through it, realize how solid it was in terms of, if you compare it, to single family, to multifamily, to all the other asset classes. I mean, I think it outperforms, and
It does.
that's kind of why I wanted to get into that asset classes. And I know we're looking at RV parks as well now, right? But that's what it's all about. It's about finding the right asset class that makes the most sense for me. And as I've been learning since December 2023 when I got into real estate, that's kind of where I ended up. Like, I'm here right now. That's what my goals are, right? And so I'm not looking back.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it from a perspective of like, hey, you're getting into real estate to solve a problem. That's not how most people think of it. Most people think, I want to make money, I want to get good returns. But most people, when they really boil it down, are trying to solve a problem. Are you trying to, get actual cash flow so you don't just hope the S&P 500 goes up and pull out what you need, just get a monthly check? For some people, that's the problem. They don't get anything monthly. For a lot of people, it's like, hey, I'm working for the government 4 months a year because they're taking a third of my salary.
Right.
How do I solve that problem? And it is interesting. Like, that, I think, would help more people, because people get advice on like, hey, I want to get into real estate, and everybody's going to pitch you on why their asset class is the best. But the reality is, it matters what you're trying to accomplish. If you're trying to get quick profit, you shouldn't buy a mobile home park. That's not what they're for. You should get into flipping. You should get into wholesaling. If you're trying to protect the money that you're making and make sure that, if I'm making $500,000 a year, I'm a doctor, my wife could be a real estate professional. We want to find ways to shelter that money. Or not shelter, that's probably the wrong word, but to give us the opportunity to claim more losses that can offset that income.
Yeah.
Then, that's what you need to get into it for. And it's interesting, and I think a lot of people feel bad about having shiny object syndrome before they've got into real estate. But I encourage it. It's like, you got to look into everything and like figure out before you actually go deep into something, look into everything to make sure you know what makes the most sense, because you won't know until you do it. A lot of people are just like, oh, I know this guy who does storage. Storage is awesome, but is it the perfect thing for them? You don't know. So you got your hands in a couple of different types of real estate, right? You guys do ground up construction in Hawaii, which to me sounds extremely complicated. So I'd love to hear about that. And then you also do co-living, which is also in Hawaii.
Co-living is out here in the mainland. So
Arizona, right?
Yeah. So as you're speaking about, so just to kind of clarify and expand on how I'm actually doing a bunch of different asset classes and still able to kind of be efficient and productive with my time, is I do ground up construction in Hawaii. I do co-living in the mainland, and I know potentially we're partnering on mobile home parks and RV parks. In each of my partnerships, I play the same role, right? So I raise capital. I do investor relations. I help with investment strategy, talk through deals, look over the underwriting and come up with planning, whatever it may be. But I know my role. I do my same role in each of my partnerships. And just by me focusing on that, right, I don't spread myself too thin and spread out my bandwidth to where I become,
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so by me doing just the one thing that I'm just focusing on getting good at and actually like, see, that's a key too. And that's one part of the Buy Back Your Time book, right? You try and find something that you like doing, you're going to have, naturally be motivated. It's going to be easier for you to pump out, long days when you need to, if you're working on closing a deal or raising funds for a deal. So my main role is to raise capital for each of these partnerships. And that's how, I'm partnered on these deals, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's a cool way to do it too, because I think everybody's goal in real estate is diversification. Like you see a lot of people, and I'm guilty of it too. I have all one asset class, which is because I really believe in it. But at the same time, somebody probably really believed in Class A office building in downtowns, and they're probably jumping off those buildings at this point. So it's all about, and to me, I think your strategy is an awesome way for somebody to get into multiple things, because every asset has different attributes, and it's so hard to go from one asset to the other and learn everything about it and be the expert on everything, because as soon as you have two things going, like I tried to get into storage for a while, and I just immediately realized like there's so much I don't know. And I wouldn't have thought that before. I mean, mobile home parks are a pretty simple asset class, but man, there's a lot to know before you can really start doing it right consistently. And as soon as I started realizing, like, hey, storage is kind of complicated. There's seasonality, there's bookings. I started realizing, like, hey, this is not my jam. Like, I'm just going to stick at what I know. And I've thought about, maybe I'll use my skills really finding the deals. So maybe I find that person who knows how to operate and they just don't know how to find deals, and I'll just find them for them. And so for a lot of people, if you can't get into deals from just tons of excess money, a really good way is from one skill that you just get really, really, really good at.
100% agree, man. Totally agree. Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting too. One of the books I'm working through right now is Who Not How. They have a very simple example in there. Like if you were in high school and your teacher asked you to write a paper and you suck at writing, and the girl next to you, I shouldn't say girl, boy or girl, is better at writing. Most boys suck at writing, so whatever. It is what it is. If she was great at writing and you just had her do it and you just told her what you want, you'd get an F on the paper for cheating. But in the business world, that's exactly what you have to do. Yeah. Because if you try to do what you suck at and you try to do everything, you're going to get nowhere.
100%.
So 100%. Cool. So walk us through kind of how the new construction in Hawaii works. Because that sounds like a pretty niche thing. I mean, even within Hawaii, you've got an island and you've probably got a certain type of house you guys like building.
Right. So same with the new construction in Hawaii. So I partnered with a operator who's a friend of mine who's been doing it for a while. I mean, he's done over 100 of it in island, so to date. And so we develop in 2 different subdivisions on the Big Island of Hawaii. So one of the subdivisions we buy 1/4 acre lots, and the other subdivision is 1 acre lots, right? So my partner already has all of the acquisitions piece dialed in, like everything gets sent to him. What he does is he has a handful of agents that constantly, whenever they find a lot, right, they send him a lot, like, hey, here's a lot, right? So we look at the lot, and the goal is he buys about 2 per month. So we buy the lot. Once we have the lot, we buy the lot. The lot's in escrow. Once we close, it goes into permitting. So he already has 7 approved master plans that is already approved by the county. So once we have a lot, we already kind of get an idea, okay, we're going to slap this, 1,250 square foot. This model is going to go on this lot, and so on and so forth. So there is like a system for it. So once the lot come out and I see, okay, this lot is in escrow, this lot is in planning, kind of gives me an idea what we're raising for, right? So there's different ways of raising, right? We have people who come in and they fund they buy the land and they fund all of the construction, right? Or some people comes in and they just investors comes in and funds the construction. Depending on the lot, the average build is about, I'd say 7 to 9 months from shovel to retail, from dirt to sale. It's pretty. It's like a, what do you call it? It's like a conveyor belt, man. Like it's a rinse and repeat process that is kind of just up and running and constantly buying and selling, through the year. So maybe about, I would say maybe 2 homes per month is pumping out of there. Yeah. And I mean, the homes are, and when you hear about Hawaii, you think about, like, on the island I'm from, Oahu, it's very expensive, right? But in the Big Island, I mean, full build, you're selling homes about, 1,000, 500, some homes and stuff like that. So it ain't that expensive.
Crazy.
It's still kind of, one good price, you know what I'm saying? And there's a market for it there. So, like, another thing that I really didn't mention is I kind of focus on the affordable housing space. Like, so all of the asset classes I'm in, so we provide just affordable homes for, that little areas in Hawaii. The co-living is like affordable housing model as well. And I mean, mobile home and RV parks can be considered, just affordable living as well. Like, it helps certain demographic, of people. And I mean, right now, with the interest rates and the way things are going, I mean, there's a huge need for it as well. So, I mean, I feel like, whatever I can do to help out, just even if it's just a little bit, scratching the surface, I mean, that's just another benefit on just investing in the asset classes that I do.
Yeah. What's interesting about affordable housing is, like, it's getting a lot of publicity now, but the reality is it's always a need, like, always. And I can speak to mobile home parks because I know that particular industry really well. Their demand doesn't fluctuate. I mean, you don't really have, like, such epic economic booms that everybody's like, all right, we're leaving this mobile home park. We're going to go buy, our 5-bedroom house in town that's 5 times as expensive. There's just always the need of that, the people who want the most affordable option they can have.
Yeah.
And that's the part I like about it. And that, like, you hear a lot of people talk about recession. We might go into it, we might not. I don't know. I'm not an economist. But what I can tell you is I don't lose sleep over it because in affordable housing, you do just fine. Right? Yeah. When things go up. I mean, a lot of people try to catch the wave because they're coming from the stock world. They think you got to buy low, sell high, which you do. But timing the market is incredibly difficult to do. And I think the best way to do it is just buy something that does well in either market. Right. If the economy goes up, everything's going to go up. It's not hard to make money when the economy goes down. When you get into the affordable housing space like you do, when the economy goes down, you're just fine. You're in the same demand you were before. And again, it kind of goes back to that whole real estate, you got to make money slow. You're going to get, the only people who get burned are usually the ones who try to do things too quickly. They try to take way too much profit too quickly. But if you take the long-term approach, it's very hard to mess up in the long run, like 10 plus years. But it's interesting too, because, like, where you're at in Hawaii, that's got to be, I mean, building houses is a niche. You probably have a neighborhood that's a niche, but gosh, Hawaii itself, just the logistics of getting material there has got to be a niche too, because he's got to know how to plan that well enough to know that, hey, I've got the material, it's going to be there to crank something out in 9 months. I mean, that's incredible.
Yeah, no, I mean, so all of that is accounted for sure. And my partner plays a role as the GC. So he lives on the same island as I'm from, but he flies out to the Big Island, at least once a week, and go check on just the projects, just check on the trades, make sure everything is going, is on time according to plan and stuff like that. And I mean, what he does is, since he kind of plays, fits into like that GC role, like, he orders the material, he ensures it's there, he goes and decides what tile, and we actually have the agent, the backside, the selling agent is actually involved too. So she comes in and she knows what's selling. So, that's like that additional piece. So she'll come in and she'll have a say, like, okay, let's run this style. This bathroom is going, these fixtures and all that. That's probably the only thing that is decided and may take a little while, is when we're looking at fixtures that may, you get them from Home Depot, Lowe's, when you're just in that finish phase and stuff like that. That's the only thing that might not have like one solid timeline, stamp on it. But as far as just the lumber, right, just the cement company, And it's all septic out there as well. So just the septic, I mean, he has all those relationships already kind of locked and loaded. So that's part of, that's part of the reason why it's been successful so far. Yeah.
Yeah. The scale that you get just from doing things over and over and over is incredible. I mean, imagine if today I decided, I spoke to that guy and I said, you know what? He makes a lot of money building homes in Hawaii. I think I'm going to start building homes in Hawaii. I bet you my first house would probably cost about $1.5 million because I wouldn't know what to do. I wouldn't know how to get lumber. I wouldn't know the material.
Yeah.
He's probably getting the lots cheaper than me because the realtors will sell to him cheaper, knowing that he's just going to get it done quickly. I mean, there's so many advantages. And I notice a lot of people, they don't want to get into a syndication or a partnership because they don't want to give up a portion. They're like, I could do it all myself. I'd rather just do that and not give somebody a portion. What they don't really appreciate all the time is like, yes, you're giving up a portion, but that deal's has such a higher likelihood of success and has the potential probably to be a much, much better deal than any one individual can get. I mean, even myself, if I tried to go do a deal completely by myself, it'd be so hard. And I've done a couple of them now. It's just tough. So, well, Kaipo, is there anything else you kind of want to go over before we wrap up here today? I know you've got a ton of different things you're into, but like you said, you're kind of doing the same thing.
No, man. I mean, I just want to thank you, Jeff. Appreciate you for having me on, man. And I mean, let's do it again for sure. Like, I mean, I'd like to jump on again, maybe in the next time you come on, a month or so. And I mean, we can have a chat and maybe talk about the co-living, and hopefully by then we can talk about mobile home park or RV park deal, bro.
Oh, yeah, you'll be a mobile home park owner here soon. I know.
Let's go, brother.
I don't play around. When I start going after stuff, we'll have stuff here pretty soon. But
love it.
If people want to get a hold of you and they want to learn more about what you're doing in the space or contact you and see any deals you're working on, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
So you can reach out to me on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. So my first and last name, Kaipo Cordeira, is my handle for all of my accounts. So, I mean, just kind of come check it out, shoot me a DM and I'll be happy to talk to anybody.
Sweet. Appreciate it. Well, Kaipo,
awesome, man.
Great having you on here. Great conversation. And I'll have to have you on here again soon to talk about the co-living.
Let's do it.
That's a super popular thing. I'd love to hear your take on all of it.
Awesome, brother. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks, Kaipo. Cool. Bye.